mic opposing gloves here, and today I'm going to show you how to make a sound similar, not the exact same sound, to this. So that big laser do 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 do, and so I got this, and now this sound is hugely modifiable. So give me a shot to show you all the mods real quick after I show you. I made a little drop. I got a little carried away. So this da na 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 is actually a variation on this patch, but right here, if I change this to like 5, like just that, we'll change it. Like that's ridiculous already. So just 4, but watch this. 3 doesn't make that big of an impact. 12. Let's bring this down to like 12. Like oh, let's go high. Let's go 32. Now I settled on 16. And then I'm not even going to touch the modifiers because that's pretty crazy. But now let's mess with the phase. Just move the phase of this saw wave. Or was it 3? Oh, it was 4. It changes the way things add. One of these made a huge impact when I was moving it. But anyways. Oh, there it is. It has to be on a ratio of 6. So you see, it's just a hugely modifiable sound. You get 100 sounds out of this. I also have 5 going out. And so you could get a variety of things. The person who was asking for this wasn't asking me to nail that sound, which this is pretty much as close I would get to anyways without like going crazy. So but he wanted to know more about FM, how they make those crazy laser things, because this guy throughout the track goes, you know, he just does a whole bunch of really cool stuff. So, and then this patch again over here, this bass right here. Oh, that's actually the patch itself. This first bass, that's actually a harmer. But if we come over here, let me get to cell. Another thing that is a big impact. Well, okay, this patch right here is also a variation on this patch right here. And then that's the harmer coming in again. And I attempted a small mix down. It's pretty hard to mix all these things together, especially when you're mixing everything loud. So there's like this give and take, and there's all these like tiny settings, and it just becomes a mess. So I didn't give too much care to the mix down. Did add a couple fills and some high loops and junk. I could have done my own loops, but I didn't feel like doing that. So another thing that makes a big impact on this sound is these 2 notes right here, right? So we're sliding from an F to an A sharp, but we could go to like a C. And then we could also go to a, let's say, an F. But I settled on a minor third, so F to A sharp. So a lot of these drops is this sort of rhythmic writing. Another thing that's tough about drops like this is they use triplets. They use borrowed time, which I now have. Oh, I don't think I've published it yet. I've been working on it though. I have a tutorial. I believe I've rendered it out. And in music theory. So go check that out. This whole section I've been working on recently is on rhythm. It's near the beginning of the series. And this is all rhythmic stuff. This is about syncopation and where you place the beat and the emphasis. So if you want to make cool basses like this, another thing that's sort of important about them is the idea of syncopation, moving the beat off where it normally would receive the accent. So here I've got this insane looking modification. I did everything to just mod X. And the only, I believe there's 2 things. Really quick, mod X volume 1, and then 3 has this weird looking volume envelope for reasons, and then 5 also has an unusual volume. So I tried mapping, and this also creates it very dynamic. This just is a patch that does a ton. So yeah. Okay, so I'm just gonna get rid of this now because I'm just gonna rely on my sound. And so this one patch right here is doing that. Now you'll notice that these things few of them have smoothing. Because okay, if I turn smoothing on, it won't even have any rhythm. Because it's smoothing, it's rubbing out, making these sharp points smoother so that I don't get it. So you want that off. That way it'll read the full brunt of what you're saying. So if you say instantly on in digital ant, it can do that. So it says, oh, okay, dude, and it does it. So another thing is you'll notice that's why I have these itsy bitsy rises on some of them. I got lazy and didn't do it on all of them, but I have these click problems. And one of the ways to deal with it was that but I started working on other stuff as I got going. And getting this rhythm is because rhythms like this are quite tricky. So you'll see like this one does not land on the beat. That's a triplet, but these two are straight time. So go watch my thing on borrowed time when you're going to be doing crap like this. Like this is borrowed time. So you're going to be going into 1/3 step and 1/3 beat on your snap settings. And then you're going to have to jump back because they go back to straight time. Or like the track I was basing it off did that. So I wanted a similar rhythm. It's pretty close to the rhythm he chose, but mine is different. This thing over here is it written out, except for it's more of a shuffle. There is some triplet stuff, as you can see though. Like these are all triplet time. These aren't a few of them like this right here. These things, those are alt movement. So it's no snap setting. I moved it like this, do. And I did that because that's what I needed to do to get that rhythm. Like there's these moments of pauses. It's the only way you're going to get a 2 pause to make it articulate clearly enough. So yeah. So now I've been just sort of giving you an overview right now. I'm going to go into detail on what I did. I'm probably not going to recreate this patch though, because it is insane. Look at this amount of post. Like, like that's crazy looking. And I have a number of other things going on here too. The Screech 2 is going through all the same processing. So I named it the Screech FM, thing. And it has its own processing. It's more like a metal laser, but it's whatever. A laser mate that shoots metal. Like that's crazy. So Fruity Wave Shaper, Parametric EQ2, like I don't even know. Could you even have that? Check this out. So whenever I'm recording, it does that. Oh, it fixed it. See, but now it's doing it again. I hit Control D. Oh man, I love that. So, okay. Let's talk about this from the ground up. I mean, let's start from the tree and go down. How about that? Because that's just gonna be easier. I have Unison on to give it a bit of a stereo image. If I take it off, this definitely sounds quite a bit like cleaner. But I like the stereo-ness of it, and it's a very, very, very light Unison. So I'm basically going to show you, first I'll talk about my sort of ideals about creating it, and then I'll just show you all the settings. And I have a Sytrus from the ground up series along with the sound design with Sytrus. This is a much more advanced patch than my usual mumbo jumbo though. So, okay. To start off, my idea was I need a metal laser. And I'm like, I know I'm going to need some unusual high ratios mixed with some mid ratios to get it out. And this is what I ended up doing. And I had this, and I wanted it to have more of a doon. So I added another oscillator to it. And that just gave it that extra girth. If I get rid of 4 completely, it's a lot closer to what they had. So 4 is responsible for a huge number of things here. Originally, when I was making it, I actually had 4 at 0, which is the same thing as it not being there really. But it was impacting things. There's weird things about having a ratio of 0. So I'm not going to talk about that. But anyways, 4 was originally not in there. And I had these all the sorts of madness going on with a low ratio. This was also at 0. I was experimenting with that, which is also interesting. So anyways, lows, mid, and then a really high one. And I tried doing additional oscillations between 2 and 3. It gets a little confusing because 2 and 3 are being used up here, and I'm using them to do parallel and side processing to themselves. Like 3 is feedbacking. And yeah, so we're gonna look at that. But anyways, I had this sort of set up in my head. And then 5, I just needed another thing, and I did that. And I wound up doing this unusual shape with X so that when this moves, it's more dynamic. That can make a huge difference as well. And this was sort of an afterthought. Now, in the post processing, I'm just going to show you the post right now. I have this unusual shape without it on. That's the wave shaper, my bad. So the wave shaper, distortion is very important on this. If I turn off all the post, this is what it sounds like. Like not impressive, right? Like that's a pretty big difference when it comes to post. Let's turn them on one by one. Okay, so I came up with that. Originally, it was a lot more aggressive, and then I went back into the patch afterwards and made changes. So I came up with this shape. Then I compressed it. I brought the lows up a lot. I brought everything up a lot except the highs, because then it sounded really squashed. I was like, oh, bad move, doop, undo. So It's already pretty squashed, but this sound design. Then I did it again. Only this time, this is very specific. Like, this is an important area right here. This was also squashing it and did things I did not like. So I settled on this particular shape. And as you see, we're getting places. So at that point, I had this ridiculously aggressive thing, and it sounded pretty cool, but it'd be a nightmare to try and mix with my drums. And so this EQ is more of a mixing, trying to make it sound cleaner type EQ. It was also a tone EQ. You see, I took sort of a comb filter approach. I was not adding crap. Like, adding crap is not what I needed to do, especially since I did not change the master limiter. I'm not going to do it at this point because it'll change stuff, and I'm not going to go through and mix more. So anyways, I added this to it. So this is without. It's got a lot more bite. So, you know, this is something I might go back and just take out and come up with other solutions. I could really fiddle with a couple more EQs in this chain or something. Like, it'd be a challenge to do this because it's a sound that just takes so much space, but it's like a sound that you want to do that. So I might consider rearranging my drop to make it fit better. Now the reverb over here is this on and off. The mix is being controlled by the rhythm. So this is basically adding a sense of wash to my sound. The wet is on just a little bit. The decay has been brought up. So I believe it's only controlling the mix. So the processing goes on continuously and the mix is being controlled via this. So there's a wash of reverb being built up as it goes. So the delay, extending out the delay allows it to get whooshier as we go along. Then when other parts come in, it has a chance to die down. And so the beginning is cleaner than the end. However, these automation curves are really sharp. So there's that. Also, I believe that this applies a much less extreme smoothing than Sytrus, but it does have some smoothing. So it doesn't follow your automation perfectly, but it's pretty darn close. So without this. So it's a very subtle change as we go. That ew at the end is the wave shaper, just so you know, in case you're wondering what that is. I had a limiter. Trying to sidechain it with my kick. It was a good idea at the time. I thought so. This is something that you'd come back to in the mixing stage and kind of get it the way you want it. So then I added another reverb. This reverb, though, does not matter because it is off during this part of the song. This is for the Screech because of routing decisions I made. So this reverb does not affect this sound, just so you know. Okay, so that's the post-production part deal. So here is the actual patch deal. So, okay. Whew. Here we go. So I have unison on 2. The volume is down. There is a little bit. I think it's like 2% or something, super small. The phase, you could mess with this a lot and get a lot of different timbres. As you can see, it'll also mess up your sound quite good. So be careful about that. I have oversampling on. I'm just trying to avoid aliasing. It does increase my CPU. And I wanted to see what it would sound like when it renders out. It sounds pretty much the same. Because of the amount of distortion I have going on, it's like almost nil. But I know I am avoiding some aliasing because I have some higher ratios in here. And this will make a big difference with that. So, yeah. So we have a phase. So anyways, yeah, you can move this around. That's a big 1% can like make or break how clean your sound is. And then the panning's up a little bit. I was going mostly for panning. That's why there's only 2 voices. Chorusing could be accomplished a similar effect. I'm not using any of the effects though. And this like, yeah, nope, not using chorusing. Sounds different. So I didn't want that. I could even come in here and get more specific with the unison on parameters and probably make my sound even cleaner with more customization if I wanted to. Like, that was an option. This is actually something I probably will do if I continue on with a track like this. So, okay, that's what's going on. Everything else pretty much where it's at, except for I am automating the automation on X. I am linking lots of stuff to this, so we're gonna have to talk about that. 1, just a sine wave. There is a little bit of skewing on it. Just a touch. Doesn't really matter. It's like one of those tiny things that at some point probably mattered a lot more than it does. And it's barely feeding back into itself. Probably also doesn't matter. Just telling you. Like what? I'm just telling you. I have it there. It made differences at one point in my process, but no longer made differences. So, okay. So that's the volume. We have now mod X. So this is just as linearly linked to mod X. So make sure you map it to mod X. This is my source of rhythm. Like this is one of them. Okay, so this is responsible for the rhythmic change. And I'm doing the volume. If I do the mod, if you use modulation, you'll have this sine wave sticking through all your sounds. Yeah, nope, not feeling it. Why is that? Well, because the modulation tab is there. Because of the way you can't automate these knobs, so they wanted to give you more options. And the modulation tab makes Sytrus makes operator 1 independent in this case, because it's operator 1, that's why. Makes it independent of all modulation, so the volume can continue on 1. So that could be useful for a variety of other sounds. Not this sound. This sound you want it to disappear with everything. So you just use the volume instead, and it's like you're basically automating this knob right here. But we have modulation that goes along with it. So this is one. So what's going on? I messed with some things at one point in time, but I ended up winding up with this. Now, if you change it, like let's go to 8. So it's really interesting, these ratios between octaves. So we have 4 and 5, which is harmonically related to the fundamental, but it's like 5. It's not an even, like an octave. Normally people do it in octaves. So this isn't an octave. So you get really, really nice sounds, even though it's not an even ratio. So 6 is the same way. 6, 7, 5, 6, 7. I like 7 a lot. And then there's 8. That's your conventional sound. So I settled on 1. And the reason, so the way the modulation works will determine your timbre. This is a timbre setting, not like I want my pitch to be lower, my fundamental pitch. Because as you noticed, 6 sounds lower than 1. It's just the way it stacks up with all the additional FM. Like you'll hurt your brain if you think too much about this. So it's just a choice of how you want it to sound. I went with the sine wave. Sine wave has a grittiness to it because there's a lot more modulation change. So more sidebands appear because the delta there's more. There's not, if we go to like a triangle wave, there's like much less change. You can see the skew is active on this thing. So there would be a lot less change there. So I like the sine wave for this type of a thing. So anyways, I chose sine wave. Moral of the story. And that's the only one going out. Just that one. And we have 5. I'm going to turn 5 off. Okay, so it like, doesn't make a huge difference. So I'll turn it back on. Operator 2 is a triangle wave. If we make it a sine wave, we get that gritty. You can tell the difference in texture there. If you change the length of the saw wave, so if you get closer from a triangle wave to a saw wave, it would be so cool. So freaking cool if you could automate this. Like we could see the cool things we could do. Now, if you want to do that, you can. You just do it manually. And that, I know it's like, oh, come on, gloves, dude, man. But like, that's all I got. You have to do it manually with the mouse and record it. You can only do it on one of them. They should really make this automatable. Be so cool. But anyways, it's not automatable. So it's up. You'll notice these values are very small. A lot of these, this one's gone crazy, but a lot of these are very precise. So I'm not going to touch them. You move them a little bit and everything changes because you just changed the volume index, which is the modulation index, and things start to stack. This is a parallel motion. So this makes the same motion bigger, but because this ratio is so high, it does weird things to the timbre. Because on individual sidebands in my FM series, I demonstrate that things, when you do parallel motion, essentially just stack up. But when you get to the point when you're reaching the edge of your frequency spectrum, things will bounce back. And that's also determined by how big your frequency spectrum is by oversampling. So you need to be careful about things like that. So anyways, did that. 16 this is a ratio of 16. That's another thing. So this is my high harmonic sound. Now, the thing about this, am I modulating this to X? No, it's not this one. Okay, never mind then. This is just going out straight. So it's like da na 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 na. It's always going like da. It's not being modulated. It's modulating 1. So it's just contributing to timbre. That's its only job in life, is timbre. 3, on the other hand, is also moving in a parallel motion with 1 and 2. So 1's feeding back a little bit into itself, but I showed that wasn't that important. Operator 3 has, I didn't go into the oscillator tab and do anything like special. Like you can see, it's not even active. So I got this bend, and this is just something I set by ear. We could change it. So now if we move this, it sounds like dull. So this gives me my grit at the top end. This is a 4. If we change this though, this is one of those fun things that you can mess with and get a huge variety of textures out of. So you might consider messing with this. Now, if I did this in FM8, I could automate this knob and do all sorts of blissfully cool things, but I can't. But there are ways to do things. You could come to pitch and make like some sort of gentle, maybe even a stair step thing. We can make it a tempo synced. I'm going to show you something cool. So we could take this and we can make it a sort of a tempo sync thing. So when we get halfway through our notes, we change timbres. Right? We change our pitch. We're going to move this up. Now we want to move it up at a ratio. Now an octave would be 8 from 4. This kind of thing takes a lot more mental effort. So we know that if we move up to an octave, because these are in harmonic steps conveniently. So if we go up 12 steps, we're going to be at a ratio of 8. So halfway would be a ratio of 6. So if we went to like, I believe that's halfway. That looks pretty halfway-ish to me. We could go to 6 and we go back down to 1. This is the sustain value, so we'll sustain back at a ratio of 4. If you follow that, I hope you follow that. Go watch my Sytrus from the ground up. This is a pretty advanced patch. So you can get those changes. Oh, yeah, it's on. It just happens really fast. Let's move this out and let's make this longer. So anyways, I'm gonna deactivate it. But you could have that kind of funness with 3. I think it would be more obvious if we went to like, yeah, there's just a lot of distortion stuff. So anyways, that's the thing. Theoretically, it didn't make that big of a difference. So I guess it wasn't that genius. So, okay, this thing is a mess. That's because this guy is responsible for some of the timbres you heard. And originally it was the source of a lot of clickiness and things that I didn't like. So I ended up mapping it to X differently. So when X is doing things, this is the curve I settled on. So when I believe this is its maximum, so it's 0. When it's at its maximum, it's all the way on. So it's modulating full volume. As it turns down though, it goes down. And at the very end, at the very bottom, if this was off, I had a lot of clicking. It might not be there now. That's pretty fine right now, but so you see how it influences the timbre? So this is, yeah, it's just doing its job. It's living its life. So, okay. So that's 3. And now it's important to note that 2, okay, let's jump back to 2. My eyes are like cold. I went swimming and now my eyes are like, it's that chlorine, man. I'm going to start crying. I'm so happy about this bass. So anyways, 2. 2 is modulating, and as it modulates, you'll notice that 2 is also got a thing going on. So 2 is being modulated by 4. So just so you know, 2 is being influenced by 4, which we'll get to 4 right now. So we're on 4 now. 3 is being so it's being fed back into itself, and it's modulating itself. So it's feedbacking, and it's also being modulated by 4, which is why 4 plays such a violent role in this sound. So 4 is a 6, but you saw me changing this all over which way. Like this thing made a way bigger dent in my sound than I sort of expected. The phase adding makes a big dent in the sound. It's just a triangle wave, and it's not been mapped to anything. It's a constant. It's just another timbre control. So when you're working with FM, you want your like rhythmic section. Then you have like your operators and controls that are for modulating the timbre, changing the timbre while you're playing, and then you've got your well, they're all timbre controls, but then you have the things that are self-modulating timbre controls. So the 2 and 4 are just timbre controls. 3 is one of those self-modulating controls, because as we move, well, that was a little embarrassing. As we move, we notice that this will change the timbre continuously. These are like stagnant timbre changes. Now, the ratio, again, these things stack up because of the serial parallel relationship I have, and the fact that 3 is being modulated, and that's modulating 1. So this looks like a parallel relationship, but there's serial processing going on here. It's a little misleading. One of the things that makes Sytrus confusing. Okay, so that's all going out. So there's that. So now we can explore the fundamental principles. So now you understand the timbre change. And the sound that I heard, that Lazer thing, had a pitch bend. So I just, put a pitch bend in there. Pretty simple. You could just automate the global pitch here, but that is far less intuitive than slide notes, I feel. But if you're doing it in like Ableton or whatever, I'm not sure if you're able to do stuff like that. So, they don't have slide notes engaged with, I know in FL. Okay, let me back up to what I just said, because I know you can automate pitch and crap. In FL, native plugins are slide notes supported, but they do not work with VSTs. At least I don't know how to make them work, unless if one of you guys secretly knows how to make slide notes work with external, like third-party VSTs, man, tell me. I'd love to know. Maybe one day I'll figure it out. So anyway, so we have the rhythmic content. That's what this guy's responsible for. It's changing the timbre, and so this thing's like crazy. It's changing the timbre, all those things, plus, so it's turning the timbre on and off and the volume of 1. So it's acting as a volume timbre control, but each movement on this line also represents a different part on oscillator, I believe it was 3, which further changes the timbre. And this is actually part of the same thing. This is a duple right here. This is a triple. Well, no, it's a triple. It's a really weird rhythm because it comes off on a triplet. Weird rhythms, man. Just weird. So, okay, so that's this patch. And there's one more thing that's going on. So 5 is pretty straightforward. It's a sine wave. It's been mapped to X like so. And it is being parallel processed by the madness of these 3 going into 5. So this is 5. This dampening thing is on by default. It's just a thing that's on in Sytrus by default. But it also has an envelope. You can turn it off. Doesn't really matter. It turns on, sustains. It's the same thing as it with it being off. So I was messing with it. Didn't like it. And 5 is coming out parallel, and then it goes out. That's it. That's all 5 is about. So you can hear 5 doing its job. So this is without 5 with 5. And that's this patch. That's it. That's what it does. You'll notice I have the declicking filter on. I'm trying to solve that clicking problem. I had it on more, and I'm not even sure. I don't know. I'm going to leave it there. That's this patch. That's everything about it. I'm not going to make this because this video is already pretty long, and I want to explain this bass real fast. So you clone that patch. You clone that patch and you get this. And what did I do? I just turned things off and changed ratios. I kept most things similar. You see, this is 3 is at 6, which I believe I was at originally. I think I changed it to 4. Yeah, I changed it to 4 later. But I was messing with this all over the map, and they're pretty much the same relationships. Which one? This one's at 14 now. I was trying to get a grittier mid texture. If I could probably get even closer texture to what I want, but I was pretty happy with that sound that came out. And it is going through all the processing that this one's going through, but the reverb is for this one. So this reverb is, I love how sometimes I click it and the wave shaper shows up. It's like so misleading. It's like, oh yeah, this is reverb. Yeah, right. So here's the wet. It's wet, and it's just a stagnant thing. It's not modulating like the other one is. It's just adding space because this bass has a different role in life. I am using FM though. I'm still modulating X, and it is moving, and you see it's low. And over here, that like that big note is this low note right here, but it also has a very sharp modulation movement right there, like right there. And its rhythm is very important, and it looks like that. There's a big, that's also the slide right there. So, no. Man, I love that. Like, I just love that. I love that kind of crap. That's just a harmor with a lot of ribbon distortion, some compression, a unison, and a very special EQ shape to try and nail a profile that I don't know, out of my head. Something similar to the track I was listening to. It's not there. It's pretty close, but it's not there. But anyways, that's that live. If you want to look at the settings here, I have 1 on 7. So an unusual setting. I talked about that a little bit earlier, and you see I've settled on, I moved the shape and the skew up a little bit, and the volume is the same. 2 is 14. It's still a triangle wave, and it's a timbre control unit. 3 is the same crazy looking envelope because I cloned it, and it looks like this. I turned up the shape and skew on the triangle wave. 4 is like this. These are the particular knob movements. I have series for all this stuff, which is why I'm not like explaining every single step in detail. You should be able to grasp some of this while we're going. And 5 is, I think I left 5. 5's, as you can see, it's not being FM'd is hard. Huh. I almost like it more without it. Oh man, I don't know. Maybe I'll modulate. Maybe I'd create a second automation clip, turn it on and off. You know, it's at a ratio of 3. Look if we change it to an octave. We just get all these cool textures. And so you pick the one that you like. I settled on 3. It's up to you. So yeah, that's this little drop thing I made in a nutshell. I know I covered the Harmer bass super duper fast. If you want to see it more in detail, this is it. I have a separate sub for it because it needed one. Without it, it sounds way bigger with it. If you're listening to it on monitors, I made this with monitors and then I put my headphones on. I was like, oh, this sounds really, so I have to be aware. My space was more consistent when I had my setup, when I had my speakers in a different thing because of acoustics, but it's whatever. I'm flexible. So anyways, yeah, that. One thing that's cool about the Harmer bass, so this is the EQ shape. It looks crazy, but I love Harmer's EQ because it makes really drastic changes, and most of the time, it's almost always pleasant. So I really love the additive EQ capabilities. I'm pretty sure it's additive. I don't know. I've never really questioned it. I like to use asymmetry on basses like this. The thing that's cool about this bass is it's got a crude low pass. Man, my eyes are watering because they're so dry. So the filter frequency is moving down without this. This is really important, and it's bringing resonance with it. So the resonance is right here. These are the settings I settled on. It's just normal resonance. So yeah, this is the final product after all that jazz. Let me make sure I turn on my, yep, it's all on. Here it is. So yeah, and of course, now you know, a lot of these sounds are so changeable. Like once I write my intro and my outro, it's going to sound, I'm going to be able to get exactly what I want, and I'll be able to change up the rhythm. There's a lot of flexibility. Here I go from a doon, da, to a doon, 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 doon. So I changed the feel of the rhythm, which is something that was also in the song I listened to. So that's a very powerful way to sort of just create a grooving thing. If you have any questions, let me know. I know this was a lot to sort of swallow, and it's not always the funnest trying to go through and make a patch. You're going to wind up with something that sounds different if you make this from scratch. Like, that's probably just the way life is. And I encourage that. It's more fun and you learn way more when you do things like this. Like, just even copying settings will allow you to see how things react. And so I'm not against going through and just moving knobs to see what they do. If you watch my other series, you'll have background information on theories behind how things work, and then this will just put sounds to those techniques in your ears, so you'll be able to be creative on your own. So yeah, if you have any questions, again, let me know. Subscribe, and have a blessed day.
Killing ladybugs.